Welcome back. This is the Broken Dealer Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Daren Blonski, and I've got Carmine Corino with me as well. But we have got a special guest today. As you all know, this podcast is all about going independent, the ins and outs and the things you go through when you want to go independent. Hopefully you find it helpful. Funny enough, I've had quite a few people actually reach out to me, Carmine, and say, hey man, really enjoy the podcast. Just random advisors throughout the country. So I guess somebody's listening to us. Well, Dylan's going to tell us his story because it's a live one, and I think probably went through the ringer more than most do. But it's good to learn from the ringer, just like Carmine went through the ringer when he went independent.
Yeah, so Dylan now, current role, he's CEO and managing partner of Cedarwood Financial Partners. And hey, Dylan, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to the Broken Dealer Podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all having me. Looking forward to it. And I'm one of those, Daren. From afar, I've really enjoyed the episodes and hearing your stories, and I know it's going to be extremely impactful as is your book.
Great, Dylan. Thank you for lying to us. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we paid him to say that.
My pleasure.
So everybody's clear, right? This is paid advertising.
So let's start off. What we always want to do is let's get your story. How did you get in the industry to how did you end up where you are today?
I started straight out of college. I actually studied business management and public administration. My last semester of college, though, I got real close with one of my dad's good friends who was at Raymond James. And he actually started at the firm that I started at, Edward Jones, and transitioned to independence, but had nothing but good things to say about Edward Jones. And so that led me that semester to look for opportunities within that sector. And I kind of got in touch with the right people, I guess you could say, and went through the hiring process, got hired on, and then I was a part of what's called the Financial Advisor Career Development Program through Edward Jones. So I spent about 7 months in the home office, learning the ins and outs of the business, got to see operations, got to tour different offices. It was a really, really good experience. That was a life-changing experience when you really think about it, from taking somebody who was going down one path, put them on another, and that was a really good program. So came out of that, and then started my business south of Houston in Leeds City, Texas. And from there, moved back to my hometown about a year and a half in, had a family health emergency. My mom came down with a ventricular tachycardia is what it was called. And when that happened, I was about 4 hours from home then. My girlfriend was from the same area. And so we both were, at that point, we were getting serious. And so with that, I reached out to leadership, got an opportunity to move back closer to home. And so then I moved my office to Temple, Texas, which was about 30 minutes from my hometown and about 20 minutes from my wife's. So it worked out really, really well. And then from there, spent about 8 years growing the business, was a part of leadership. Looking back, I think it was more of, part of being the mouthpiece for the organization more than it was leadership, but I'm still grateful for that opportunity as well. And then in 2022, decided to break away, and we started Cedarwood Financial Partners alongside Commonwealth Financial Network.
And that brings you to today. And some would say you're famous, seeing your name in a couple industry rags, right, recently. So let's start with...
Those are bragging rights, though. Let's be real.
Yeah.
After going through that and paying those kind of bills, you got some bragging rights, my friend.
Well, I also, I'm requesting your autograph when we're done on one of those investment news magazines, if I could find one.
You got it.
Why don't we start here with, and Daren and I speak to, and so do you, the expansion that Cedarwood is going through now is fantastic. So what was your why? Why the departure from Ed Jones? And was it a constant drip like it was for me? Or was it a XYZ, this happened today, we need to exit. So why don't you take us through the why?
Yeah, I'd agree. It was just the constant drip, and finally just got to a point. I think the breaking point was on the leadership side of things more than on the financial advisor. There was some certain quotas that our firm was trying to hit, and it kind of skewed the hiring process, which I was in charge of in our old region. And got really conflicted with the regional manager at the time around this certain hire that we were making. I just had a gut feeling that it wasn't the right person. We had better resumes, but that's the route we went to pad the scorecard and get more points with the home office. And And that person ended up not making it they made it about 6 months in the business and then we're gone and we shut that office down. But that started the real, hey, I need to see what's on the other side of this, because this whole leadership thing, cause I was all in. I would, you talk to a lot of Jones. I know Daren, you were there too. Like you drink the Kool-Aid, right? At the firm, and you're all in.
It's green.
Yeah, it's really green. And so you enjoy that. And so that was me. I was all in. I thought I was a lifer. I wanted to work my way up the trajectory. But as you get exposed to what that actually looks like, you start to realize that's not what you want to do, at least in my case. And so that started it. And then just through COVID and a few other things, started to listen to podcasts just like this one. And Mindy Diamond was a big one that I listened to during my due diligence. And then from there, actually engaged with her and her team, and they represented us all the way through the finish. So I wouldn't say it was one particular event, but if I had to pinpoint it, it would be the one that I shared with you. But it was more so just a lot of those. And then starting to listen to her podcast, you're like, that's not how it is here. I thought that was a industry regulation. That's actually not. This person's doing what I wanted to do. So it was that. And then I always tell advisors, it's like, if you have no intention to leave, don't even look, because once you look, you can't unsee what independence actually looks like. And because after that point, you're going to be pulled to do it.
That's interesting. And just to get some clarity, you were in a management role at Ed Jones.
I was. So I served a couple of different leadership roles. The last one in the last few years was the recruiting leader for our region. So our region was about 60 some odd advisors stretched over, call it a 50, 60 mile stretch of interstate. And so I represented all of the recruiting for our region.
So that's an interesting tip there, because you weren't an advisor with a book of business at Ed Jones and you wanted to leave because of conflicts of interest or quotas or things like that. It was more the cultural difference.
It was 100% the culture. I had a great lifestyle practice. I don't think I had any issues there. There were certain things that I wanted to brand myself to separate from the other 15 advisors that were within 10 miles of me that were with Edward Jones, because there was no separation. Everybody, we all did the same thing. And so it just became about who do you know? And then how long have you been there? Those were typically the advisors that had the biggest books of business, to be candid, because there was no way you could separate from another Edward Jones advisor. There wasn't something that I could do that they couldn't, or vice versa, even if you had designations. And so, yeah, it was the cultural differences that really started to open the eyes, if you will, to what's on the other side of the fence.
It's really true. Once you see the other side and you start to contrast, and Dylan, I think your words are wise, right? I think anyone probably listening to this podcast gets it, that you're already looking, but once you start looking, you start to see all these things that you're like, what on earth and why? And often those things that you're talking about, Dylan, are things that the broker has put in place, policies, procedures to protect the broker from the individual financial advisor. They're not there to serve the advisor. They're not even there to serve the client. They're there so that the brokerage can limit their liability. And once you start to see that, you look at like all these things I do all day long, day in, day out, that cost me a lot of money and time to protect them from me.
Great point.
Yeah. I mean, we even said in our region, we weren't leader led, we were lawyer led at the firm level. And I mean, I think that speaks to a lot of the big ones, to be fair.
Two things on that. One is these bigger firms, these broker dealers we all came from, their capabilities and compliance guardrails are always built around the lowest common denominator, that guy or gal that just got licensed. So if you're 10, 15, 20 year seasoned advisor, you're held to the same limitations as the person that just got licensed and landed their first client. When they get so big, that's the only way they can manage their people. It's impossible. And the second is peeling the onion, right? Start asking those questions. And, we're recording many advisors at the moment, and we're comparing our offering to other firms that they're looking at to leave. We get into the conversation, Daren, you and I speak about this all the time. These firms are willing to write a check. Hey, I got an offer for a check for this and check for that. I said, well, peel the onion, make sure it's right for you. But even at the firm that you're at, we have one, this was interesting. This just came up. an advisor that said they had 100% payout. Okay, interesting. She filled out her intake. I said, well, I want to peel this onion. So we're on one of our calls. Great advisor, built a fantastic practice in the Midwest, and come to find out that she has to use that firm for portfolio management. They charge her 50 bips.
Oh,
So, right. So I said, well, you're not 100%, you're 50%. And if we bifurcate your payout and your cost of portfolio management like we do here, you're getting a raise. And it's just when these firms have, and they did this all to us, talk about, drinking the Kool-Aid, they do a really good job at isolating us from the outside. But when I hired, my first business coach was Dan Sullivan's strategic coach program, because I knew the firm where I was at, they could not answer the questions that I had because I wanted to scale. I had to go outside, had 3 business coaches through that time. And then I met advisors that were independent. And I'm like, wait a minute, you can do that? I can't do that. And I go back to home office. Hey, why can't I do that? Oh, no, because that's crazy. It's impossible. You can't do that. Going back to the client's needs above all else sign that hangs real big in our office. I couldn't hang that up at the old firm. So it's all these drips, right?
Carm, let me interject there for a sec, because I think you bring up a really important point. And then Dylan, you brought this point up too. And that was that you got in this scuffle with this leader who was trying to hit a quota, right? So when you look at these big brokerages, they have quotas about who they deem they need to employ or not employ, often because of politics and often because of optics. And so when you look at, okay, well, we're going to hire someone because they fit a particular optic that we're after as a big organization, it's not necessarily merit, it's optic, then you have to bring down the regulatory, the procedural, the processes to that level, to that least common denominator, that person that maybe doesn't even have a clue what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And that's why you have to have so many guardrails at the big brokerages, because that's the only way they can scale. Right? It makes sense. And there's a world for that, right? There's a world where it makes sense to be in a bit brokerage and you're starting off and it's great. But then, like I always tell people, hey, if they're a really good advisor, they're generally not going to retire at a big brokerage. It doesn't make sense from a retirement standpoint, doesn't make sense from a business practices standpoint, and sure as heck doesn't make sense for serving the client in their best interest.
Yeah, and you mentioned it a minute ago, Carm, when it came to the whole idea of knowing your firm really well. There was a leader, he was a good mentor of mine. He moved into the home office with the GP at Edward Jones, and he left, I guess he left about 6 months before we did. And now he's kind of started his own firm, but he shared some of his experience that he knew the firm, even at the highest level, he knew the firm exceptionally well. He knew everything ins and outs about Edward Jones and the vision. But when he left or started to look at his options to leave, he realized he had no idea what the industry actually was all about. All he knew was how to play within the vision and the confines of what the managerial team at Edward Jones wanted. So even for him being at that general partner level, he still had no idea what was on the other side.
Well, it's comfortable. Our minds tell us we got a rule book, we can operate, we can make some money, we can create some impact for our clients. It's the being uncomfortable process of looking at options and comparing and doing some due diligence. That's uncomfortable. But to your point, once you see, you can't unsee it. And then every time I see this I see this a lot. Like we have a big team joining us in a few months in August. They're from Texas. Giddy up. And
Giddy up, Cowboys.
LOIs are signed, a month ago. And from that point on, every time I talk to them, like, can you believe they're doing this and they're doing that? I said, now there's a spotlight because you see the light at the end of the trail, the end of the train tunnel, and you see you're almost there. But now all the problems and issues and concerns that you had and the limitations all get magnified because you're on your way out. And that happened to me as well. The moment that I said I'm leaving, it's like more stuff came to the surface. I'm like, wow, I didn't even see that, how bad that was. And I didn't even realize that's going to affect me later on. So it's really interesting just to get your take on it because everyone has all different experience, and there's always a different straw that broke the different camel's back for everyone. So that brings us to today. So you left about, 2.5 years ago now?
Yeah, December of 2022.
So now you had some issues with Ed Jones. You want to walk us through the why and where you sit today?
Yeah. So I guess some context here as well, because I don't want every advisor listening to this to hear this story or read those famous magazine articles that you're talking about and think that's what's in store for them.
Did you frame them and put them on the wall?
We're in the process of putting
Excellent.
a collage together.
Of course,
you're going to be like President Trump, who puts his profile picture when he got arrested, and he put that up in the Oval Office.
It's fuel, Dylan. It's fuel.
It is, and I mean, we're excited to be moved on. But I'll walk you back. So, for those listening, with us, I say us because there were 9 of us that left Edward Jones all at the same time. And, we were spread out amongst, call it five different regions, which first to ever do it that we know of at that type of scale.
You all did it at once, same day?
We all did it at once. I think
wow.
the way it aligns. So I'll kind of give you the whole, how did you all come together story too, is, we were either blood family or really good friends that had conversations about the what ifs that led to, hey, I'm looking here. So we were all going down this path of due diligence. And then once it aligned, like, well, if we're going to do this, what's possible if we do this together? Because we all really liked what Commonwealth had to offer. And so we ended up pursuing that.
Real quick, we need to go down the rabbit hole of you went to Commonwealth, but now you're going to LPL and have that discussion, right?
That's
well,
at
potentially.
the end. That's at the end.
But we'll get to that at the end later. It's chaos after chaos, right?
That's right.
But it's what we signed up for, and it's why we love independence. But yeah, so we all left together, and during that process, we are all doing independent due diligence and aligned to say, hey, I really like this. I really like you guys. What if we did this together? So then we engaged legal counsel, and obviously counsel is going to give you if you do this, you should just be prepared to fight. And that means you have to do everything by the book. And so we followed everything to a T, minus a few things, obviously. And the biggest regret is that, we kind of, in a way, committed to Commonwealth through like a letter of intent, like everybody does, that, hey, we're going to come. And then due to life events, we continued to kind of push that day, because originally it was going to be about 3 months after that letter of intent. Would end up being about 9 months. And in the meantime, right, we're kind of like you mentioned, Carm, we're locked in to say, gosh, I can't believe they're doing this. I can't believe they're doing that. And, all these things are magnifying. And here we are, kind of moving along. And so it took way too long. We didn't do anything wrong.
Let me just interject right there, because sorry to interrupt you, Dylan, but you're hitting some really critical points that I think the people who listen to this podcast need to hear.
Yeah.
What Dylan's about to explain to you is a really important distinguishing difference between, and it's what went sour in Carmine's situation too. Most people who end up in a legal battle, it's because there's multiple advisors going at the same time, and they get you on labor law issues. When you're an advisor just leaving, it's different one person than what you experience with multiple advisors. Okay, proceed, Dylan. Sorry, just wanted to make sure people catch that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because that's the point I want everyone to take from this. So we go through that process. We finally decide that, okay, here's our date, and we leave. But that was about, again, 7 or 8 months after we had kind of signed the LOI. And we leave, and about 9 days later, we get the TRO. And so we deal with that.
Explain what a TRO is for people so they know.
Yeah. So it's a temporary restraining order, which, in our business means that you can't, well, let me back up. It's not typically this way, but the way they worded ours was we could not contact our clients until we got in front of a judge or reached an agreement with them to do so. So it really shut down even our legal rights to have contact with clients. And if you transitioned, or if you're thinking about transition, those first, call it 30 days, are probably the most critical. And so 8 days, 9 days into that, we're shut down for about 10. So, half of that first critical mass 30 days, we were not able to contact our clients. And so we get through that. Our attorneys, get a resolution. We're back to business. From there, we're back full speed ahead doing our thing, but we know, hey, eventually we're going to be in front of FINRA and going to have to deal with this or settle. So fast forward about a year, it's coming up. We got our FINRA arbitration, and then Ed Jones reaches out for a settlement. So we go into that thinking, okay, we'll be able to settle this and move on. Cause I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we did everything right. I mean, I don't think any transition goes perfect. We knew that the only thing that we potentially did wrong was take way too long from the time we said we're going to leave to actually leaving.
And let's be real, wrong is a squishy word there, right? So
yeah,
in this game, for Dylan to say, hey, we potentially did wrong, that's probably an exaggeration, because I don't know that there's wrong and right. There's preferences, and different brokerages have different preferences in how you do things, and different judges have different preferences, and arbitration judges have different preferences. But this game, if you get caught in the black and white, wrong and right, there are definitely some things you don't want to do, but you got to be really careful there. Sorry, Dylan, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Another good distinction. So typically in these settlement agreements, you spend about 60 minutes with a mediator, and then they go back. They spend about 60 to 90. We saw the mediator from 8:30 in the morning till 4:00 in the evening. We spent about 45 minutes total with the mediator. So then we say, okay, well, we're not doing that. So let's just move forward with the arbitration. Well, sure enough, something comes up and they have to kick the date down. I can't remember if it was them or us, but the date gets pushed. And then fast forward to this past January, we actually get in front of FINRA and we spend 2 weeks there. If you can avoid that process, I tell you to do it. So that just means you do things by the book, and, don't sign a letter of intent until you're ready to rock and roll, within about a 60, 90-day window. But we did that for 2 weeks. We felt good about where our case stood. I think in total, they asked for about $15.5 million plus punitives and other damages. So, could have been upwards of $20 million, when the dust settled. When you all break it down, this is just a hypothetical, because in FINRA, the arbitrators don't have to give you any rationale, don't have to give you any reasoning. They just issue an award. When you break down the award that was received, it's almost to the penny what each of our 9 compensation was from the day we signed our letter of intent to the day we left. So essentially what we had to do was pay back what we were compensated from Edward Jones from the LOI date to the date we left. Again, that's a hypothetical, but our attorneys and ourselves, we kind of crunch those numbers, and I mean it's within a very small margin of being exactly to the T what those numbers were. And then the fact that one of our partners who joined us at the time was not a practicing advisor, so he was a W-2 employee of a branch, joined us, he got excluded. So that almost confirms that what they're doing, what they did there, their calculation was, here's the compensation. And then they equally hit Commonwealth with about the same for, I guess you can call it allowing the time. I don't know. Like Daren said, it's so black and white. And, if I could do it again, I guess the only thing I would do differently, I'd still leave 10 out of 10 times. Even if you told me at the end, we're going to have to write a check, I'd still be sitting here today talking to you about how wonderful independence is. But when the dust settles, we're excited to be moving on from it. I think if an advisor asks, who we're probably the worst, I know Carmine, you said you're the worst case scenario. We're like the worst. Nobody will probably ever do it again like us through Edward Jones, just because it's pretty uncommon. But the way that our relationships were intertwined, and we didn't want to do this, hey, one of us leave and then the next person leave a month later. We didn't feel like that was fair to Edward Jones either, that if we all were convicted that independence was the right thing to do, and we knew the risk of doing it together, and we were so confident in what our future held that it was worth all of that we needed to do it all at the same time. And that's why we did it.
Wow. And to be very clear to the audience, you didn't break any rules, any industry laws, rules, anything. This was basic interpretation of
But that's the thing with an arbitration panel, right? I mean, it's not about, that's what I'm saying. It's not about black and white laws. It's about what does an arbitration panel think is reasonable? And what Dylan, you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is that because you signed the letter of intent, at least the justification on the arbitration panel was, well, they meant to leave anyway. They were just freeloading, and therefore they shouldn't have been compensated for that money during that period of LOI to the actual leave date.
Yeah. And again, they don't give any justification to that, but when you break the numbers down, it's almost right in line with that. And to answer your question, these were compensatory damages. They challenged the fact that, and again, I think that would be the only regret is how long it took for us to actually make the decision and then to actually leave.
Which is really uncommon. I've never heard of that, by the way, in all the transitions I've been a part of, and I've helped transition well over $2+ billion off of brokerage platforms. And that's a unique one.
Well, and I think it has to do with our size, right? I don't if another advisor did due diligence and they signed an LOI and they were just one advisor and, or even two advisors in the same office type of thing. But I think given our size and scale is that it drew the red flags, which then says, well, now we need all of this. Now we have to collect all of this information. So text messages, we need your emails and, all of the things that you have to give in a discovery. And then, that kind of gives the timeline of when things were done. And then you have to also turn in your contracts that if you signed any with Commonwealth. And so on ours, it had the date that we signed on there and then it had the date that the Commonwealth signed.
So a couple things there. One, in just pro tips, right? And Carmine, I know you had something, and then I'll jump back to you. Mm-hmm. Text messaging, emails, anything electronic, you absolutely, if you're thinking about transitioning, you need to go silent there, right? And that is the number one way they're going to get at you. What Dylan's also talking about, and I had another advisor leave, Edward Jones, that told me this, and he's like, you know what it's like, Daren? When you leave a big brokerage, it's like your hand's in a bucket of water. And when you pull that hand out, you need to let the water just fill in where your hand was and do it smooth. And when Dylan and his crew left, what they did is they created this ripple where you never want to force the brokerage to have to make an example out of you. Right. And it sounds like, Dylan, you and your crew did that, knew you were doing that, and said, screw it, we're going to do this and we'll deal with the consequences. I know another group not too far from me did the same thing. And that's fine. You're more likely to draw the lawsuit. So I always tell advisors or people leaving, like, you want to disappear in the night, because the bottom line is you might do nothing wrong, but it's not about not doing anything wrong. It's about dissuading the lawsuit. It's about not antagonizing. It's not embarrassing these big, powerful general partners and poking their ego. Because once their egos are poked, that's all right. We got $1 million we can throw at this lawsuit just because we don't like you. And you don't have $1 million to do it.
Yeah. So I agree with you 100%. Like if you have the choice, you do it just like you said. With us, we didn't really have that choice just because of how the group came together, conversations, we spent during the due diligence process and then the alignment to say, okay, we're going to do this together. And then each of us made that own decision to say, I know the risk. I know that we're likely going to be on the end of this just because we are poking the bear, but to get to the other side and to do it the way that we envision doing it, it's almost got to be done this way. And let's try to just keep it as clean as we can. And that's what we did. And, I'm grateful that, we didn't have any of the client solicitation or employee solicitation of those type of things, simply because that could have led to the massive $20+ million that they eventually were asking for when you include punitives and all other things that it could have added up.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you guys transitioned and did it so cleanly and did it with 9 people, like that hats off, because that's hard to not have anybody make mistakes and do stupid things along the way and not give them any ammo to go after you for that 20 mil. That's pretty impressive. So nice work on that.
One highlight, right?
Yeah. Why don't you tell us what's going on at Cedarwood today now that this is behind you, rearview mirror? So how are you guys growing? Who's your target advisor? Why don't you kind of give us an overview? We're about to wrap this up here, but give us an overview on what Cedarwood's working on now.
Yeah. So fresh out of the arbitration, we onboarded 3 new teams. So it's like, we kind of put a pause on things to deal with that, but we're picking right back up where we left off. And now we get to really move free. And I told the team whenever we kind of close that chapter that, we're unchained, right? Even though we had a lot of success in continuing to do business, and we brought on a few advisors, between the filing of the TRO and the actual arbitration, we still were able to see some really impressive growth. But now that we're completely unchained, it's full throttle ahead. So we're excited about what's next. And as Daren mentioned, we're with Commonwealth now and soon to be LPL. I think it's August is when that's closing. So we're in the process of doing some due diligence, as far as what the options are, as away from broken dealers, right?
True independence, Dylan. We can tell you all about true independence. It's a beautiful thing.
So I want to just end on this note. The way I know Daren, the way Daren and I know Dylan, the way Dylan knows Daren and myself, is we're a member of a mastermind group. We meet every month. Twice of them are live every year. And you want to talk about support throughout my transition process, calling on the people in this mastermind group for support. Some went independent, some were already independent. So getting all that really good support. And Dylan and I spoke several times through what he was going through his dark days. But not just that, it's simple blocking and tackling. Hey, what tech do you and your team use for this? And we're hiring. So our good friend Brian Bogner down in South Carolina gave us a tip on how he just found 2 really good hires. So that's something we're going to blast out to the team, to everyone in the group. So if you're an advisor out there and feel like you're on an island, create a mastermind or join an existing one. I'll tell you, that's where these bonds happen. And you want to talk about support, and everyone in this group are givers. And when you get a bunch of like-minded people together, man, 1 + 1 equals 5.
I'll echo that.
So get out there and find a group that you can click
extremely thankful,
with.
Especially as you mentioned during the dark days of this group, and each of these men in the mastermind just run exceptional firms, and so getting to hear what's working well for them, what's not, and sharing the same from the Cedarwood side has been a real blessing.
All right. Well, on that note, let's wrap it up. Dylan, thank you so much for your time. Great story. I'm sure people are going to walk away more educated than they were. Daren, always a pleasure. I'm glad you did your hair today for today's episode. We're all excited.
Every once in a while, just for you. Because I actually have hair to do, Carm.
Here we go.
I mean, let's be real.
Okay. Okay, on that note, we will see you next time here at the Broken Dealer Podcast.
Thank you for listening to Broken Dealer. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.brokendealer.com. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Carmine Corino and Daren Blonski. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Fermata Advisors, LLC, DBA Sonoma Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Cornerstone Planning Group are both independent registered investment advisors and are non-affiliated entities. The opinions expressed by Daren Blonski and Carmine Corino on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Sonoma Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Cornerstone Planning Group. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. The information presented is for educational purposes only and is not intended to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.